You ever on your way, like you're at the airport, you've packed, maybe you're a little late, and you have that stomach drop moment where you're wondering if there's something that will get you arrested or flagged by TSA somewhere on your person, or in your
like
bag.
when you're watching your bag like roll along the thing, like into the machine, you're like, hang on.
Oh,
hang on, wait. Oh man.
The list of things for me that are a possibility are forgetting that I have something that's maybe over 3 ounces, accidentally sticking my water bottle in my carry-on bag and forgetting that I haven't emptied it out yet, right? Like consumed it or poured it out. Those are the kinds of things that I'm usually worried about when my bag goes through the scanner. Is, did I forget about some liquids that I shouldn't have on me? Or maybe even a pair of scissors that like
tweezers.
Maybe I had on me, like something like that might get me flagged. That's about as bad as it gets. Yeah, I'm not a knife, but like, scissors.
Ever the straight person on our show, Flo's the good one. She brings the normal things. I'll say in my 20s, we'll say I got my nose into a little bit of trouble on occasion. Lived in South America for a while, and getting your nose into a little bit of trouble, you would have to think before getting on flights.
Absolutely.
That hasn't
and
been
like Prop 64 has been passed here in California, so maybe you made a trip to the dispensary and there's some stuff stashed in your bag that you're a little worried about, right? Like,
and if you're flying between states, like you can get in serious trouble, I guess. Right. Even not between states. Yeah,
well, California has said that they're not going to pursue people in airports because some of the flights are like within, even though it's federal airspace, but like some of the flights are between Californians or between other states where it's been decriminalized. And that's kind of the point. So they're really not looking for personal use stuff. They're more looking for like people trying to traffic.
I had a partner back in the day who had like half a joint in her pocket, realized that in the TSA line, and like quick had to go to the trash can. That's about the closest call I've ever seen.
Yeah.
What I've never seen, though, and certainly not from a man
who should know better,
in his 50s, 60s.
Yeah, who should know better. I don't know how old he is. I could do some Googling.
We're talking about a full-grown man who accidentally brought a gun.
Correct.
To the airport, and he left it in his bag. So he checked the bag, it appears, or something like that. And he got flagged.
So that was unclear to me, whether or not he checked the bag or whether or not he was like going through, because all of the articles kept mentioning that it is illegal to bring a firearm onto a plane with you, obviously, right? So I would assume that this would kind of be a non-story if he checked the bag, because you are allowed to check a firearm under the plane.
Have we even said who we're talking about?
No, we haven't.
We have not. But I just want to point that out.
We just said it's a man who should know better. It's an assembly member, right?
That is correct. Yes, an assembly member.
Right. District.
Representing the 9th district in California, yes.
Who has been sort of annoying to progressives for ages because he is more along the Republican lines. He's a former cop. His name is Jim Cooper.
Hang on. Are you saying that there's people in this state who are conservative, but they put a D next to their name?
That is correct.
This might be the first time we've ever covered this.
That is correct.
Who would do such a thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
He's also 58 years old, born January 5th, 1964, according to Wikipedia.
And yeah, so yeah, he did that. Jeremy White at Politico broke this story, and he sort of hints like, people might think that that's a problem for him in his run for sheriff of Sacramento County. I do not.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Well, also there's the part of this where it's not illegal for him to bring a gun to the airport. as retired law enforcement, I guess that's a part of the deal. If you used to be law enforcement, you can bring guns to the airport. You can't bring them on the plane. Right.
But which is what it appears he tried to do. And
unlike
then that's
the rest
why
of us, they will hold your shit for you at TSA and then like let somebody come and get it, which is also apparently a privilege set aside for ex-law enforcement and nobody else.
I don't understand the ex-law enforcement thing. So I guess I kind of understand like the military and current law enforcement thing. Like if you carry this for your job and maybe you were even doing your job up until the point that you show up at the airport. I'm saying this under the guise of like, this is what we say we want them to do, but you're retired. I just don't understand. I guess I just don't understand the whole retired law enforcement thing and why that's nothing but a like, thank you, goodbye. Like, go on about your day. You have special
rules for you now. Like all these.
I mean, the other side of it too. I mean, here's another thing that's infuriating about it is that like anybody who has spent any time around guns and has done any training around guns, like, will tell you that if your attitude towards a firearm is so blasé and so just like that you put one in your bag and forget about it and take it to the airport, you should not have a license to carry a firearm. Like that's ridiculous. That is like somebody in that who has that mindset around firearms is like gonna hurt themselves or somebody else with a gun at some point.
So here's my thing, right? I'm like, okay, let's just like accept all of these rules that he's former law enforcement. He can bring the gun to the airport, but he can't get it on. The part that bothers me is that it's like, oh, I forgot. I can't remember if he's quoted saying he forgot that the gun was there or that he grabbed the wrong bag. And I'm like, remember when TSA used to ask you, has this bag been away from you? Has anybody else?
They still do.
I'm like, okay, well, if that's still the case, like, yeah, he's in the clear as former law enforcement. My question is, why don't you know what's in your bag? Who packed this bag for you? Like, you're answering some questions that should trigger another set of alarms. You should
make sure that John Wick didn't pack your bag.
Like, what else is in this bag? And why don't you know what's in it? Because I'm really confused, because I've been asked that and have hesitated because after packing my bag, I gave it to the hotel people because I wasn't quite checking out yet. And I needed to like run around town until my 9 p.m. flight. And I'm like, Am I actually answering this question correctly? Technically, my bags have been away from me since I packed them and like blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh yeah, I forgot about the firearm that's in my bag before I was like about to go through security. Like, what?
He was out very late the night before, exercising a very specific set of skills and forgot to unpack.
And grab the wrong bag or something. I'm just really confused. I don't understand.
To be honest, he sounds perfect for Sacramento sheriff to me. If anything, I think this lends credibility to his candidacy.
In districts 3 through 5, absolutely.
As a person who is the law and has fallen, he has fallen on the side of the law's the law and everybody should follow it. So then I'm very confused what happens to those people when they get caught not following it, why the hammer doesn't come down as hard on him.
Flo, you aren't listening. It's everybody else should follow the law and go along with the law.
If you're a cop, no.
No, that's not for you. You're a good guy, so we don't have to worry about if you follow the law.
Okay.
They don't do bad things.
Okay, because his nickname in the Black community is that he's the Black cop from Boys in the Hood. So that's what everybody refers to him as, because he harasses people and does all kinds of like regular cop stuff that's just out of pocket. So I guess I shouldn't be surprised that the laws don't apply to him. It's just surprising that you want to be law enforcement but don't want to enforce the laws when it comes to yourself. It's just, a little loophole there. But
why you become top cop, because then no one can tell you what to do.
That's true.
We have a full show ahead of us.
We do.
And we could talk about this particular topic all day. Jim,
have I ever told you guys about the craziest thing I ever got caught trying to take through airport security?
What?
That will have to remain a mystery. That's to keep our listeners on the hook.
Yes.
What could it be?
I love it.
Come to our next in-person meetup and maybe Skylar will reveal.
And he'll bring it. Yeah.
I'll tell you how many tattoos I have, and Skylar will tell you what he got caught trying to take through TSA.
Flo has 3 tattoos, folks. Spoiler alert.
Wait, do you really have 3 tattoos?
I do. I have 3 tattoos. Skylar is so surprised.
I'm like I was like, have I ever been to a pool party with Flo? Like,
I do.
Oh, all right.
I only know because she told me like a week and a half ago.
Yeah, my last one I got in December.
We're going so over on this intro.
All right, we're done.
Let's start the show. Jim, you're coming to the next Voices event. Bring your gun.
Voices, the things they said. Voices, some from those dead. All the voices heard. Voices, things we say. Voices, they're in your head. All the voices heard.
Hello, everyone. You have Kempa.
And you have Skylar.
And Flo.
Woo! Welcome to a very later than usual recording of the show. We had been getting into the habit of recording early Monday evenings, but it's panned out this way, and we all seem to have a lot more energy than I thought we would.
I mean, it's early yet.
Yeah.
A lot can change in the next 45 minutes.
That's right.
But as you know, folks, or as you probably gleaned, Shannon is not here. She appears to have chipped a tooth, and I don't know how much we're allowed to joke about that.
Worse than chipped a tooth. It sounds like she cracked a tooth and actually needs a significant amount of work done, and she's in a considerable amount of pain.
Well, I'm going to step back on any jokes I was going to make.
I got you, Shannon. I know.
Shannon,
it's no
I just want to know, henceforth, are we allowed to call you Chip?
There we go.
Let us know.
I was thinking that she was gonna talk like Job from Arrested Development and whistle every time she said a word.
Yes, I love it.
Shannon.
Shannon, baby, tell us.
Shannon, baby. On top of that, I was considering hey, maybe we get PJ on because he is our most reliable guest host. PJ is really sick, getting his gallbladder out. So we wanted to reach out to PJ, say we love you, and get better soon.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's where we are. It's the 3 of us.
Yep.
Sweet.
We've got a fun little episode today. And then I dive us into some terrible topic.
Insofar as this show has fun episodes.
We like to laugh, folks. Today we're going to talk a little bit about Russia's invasion of. Sorry, Flo is drinking this White Claw and making a disgusted face.
No, it's
right
a
now.
White Claw Surge.
Yeah,
terrible. It's terrible.
It's from
8%
2 seasons ago. And Flo earlier, before we started recording, said verbatim, I'm in such a good mood. I don't want to have to finish this drink.
So bad.
Or start it.
0 stars, do not recommend.
Okay, starting over. Today, we're going to discuss a little bit on the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Obviously, this has been covered front to back, I think, in a lot of places from a lot of outlets. But I think that sort of wartime rhetoric and the way people respond to a rise in tensions is a really interesting thing and something that I think we can all learn about. We 3 hosts were all in our early 20s, I believe, during the drum beating for leading into the Iraq War. And so I think we have some experience with this.
I was in high school, I think, when that was happening.
Oh, were you? I was a freshman when we were first attacking them, I think, 2002, 2003 in college.
Yeah, because I was a sophomore when 9/11 happened, and I think I was a junior by the time we were actually doing invasion because I was in Atlanta, and so we protested by a CNN center and several other places around the city, really futilely trying to raise the flag on not doing this, but
that was a real
anyway. Yeah.
I think for a lot of us, like a real baptism by fire of like your first time really trying to be a part of a movement, trying to stop something unethical. And we had no power. I was marching through the streets of Madison during this.
I went to Switzerland and went to a protest and had to tell everybody I was Canadian.
I would have done the same.
Yeah.
Well, but so let's talk a little bit about this. Does anyone want to lead into like, you know, what led to this invasion? I could do that.
Go for it, Dave.
Yeah. So effectively, and listen, this is going to be sort of a layman's explanation, but you know, I'll just keep it very bare bones. Effectively, I think we all know that Vladimir Putin of Russia, the president there, and the Western world, you know, Europe, as well as the United States, have been sort of at odds since he took power about 22 years ago. He has been deeply concerned on his end by the expansion of NATO eastward towards the borders of Russia. He did consider that when George Bush, during his presidency, George W. Bush, I believe, said that he wanted to bring Ukraine into NATO. Putin said outright, like, this is an existential threat to Russia. That's what we consider it. And so he, for well over, I guess, a decade now, has sort of been saying, hey, get back, get back. Obviously, Vladimir Putin is no angel. He has regularly sort of been somewhat aggressive around these borders. He, what was it, 8 years ago, went in and attacked the Crimea region and took it. And, you know, basically that just became a part of Russia. That's southeast Ukraine. That's sort of an important kind of coastal area, very important for trade, things like that, I think. Right. And currently there are some other regions, Donbass, am I saying that one right? In eastern Ukraine that have some folks that want to separate from the Ukrainian nation and either become their own state or become something akin or closer culturally to Russia.
Right.
Am I missing anything?
I was just going to say part of the reason why, I mean, you know, for those who are not as familiar, that you know, Putin sees NATO encroaching on, you know, countries that are approaching Russia, especially you know, in this particular situation, is because they see it strategically from a military perspective of they're wanting to defend their borders, right? And so the existential crisis becomes, if something happens and there is a major conflict, now they're exposed in a way that they wouldn't be exposed otherwise. In addition to that, of course, Ukraine has resources, and so that's another reason why they really want to make sure that they're allied with them, and in this case, not just allied, but actually, you know, under their control. But this really is like a sort of a strategic thing. I think about it very similar to the way in which, you know, the U.S. has kind of taken any attacks on, you know, anything happening in North America are things that the U.S. gets involved in because they say, like, if you're getting that close, you know, you're now encroaching on us, right? And so that it's a very similar mindset to that, but that still doesn't make, you know, the movements that you do under the auspices of, hey, this is a threat to us, okay.
Right, like, it's like a parent hitting a kid and saying, this hurts me more than it hurts you.
Right.
So we are about 2 weeks in now since Putin made this very long speech, about an hour long, out of character. He was very emotional during it. And then soon after that, he directed the attack on Ukraine. And it seems to be an all-out attack from Russian troops. They're trying to take the whole country. They're trying to take Kiev, the capital. And it's been just, obviously with the fog of war 2 weeks in, we don't know what the casualties are on either side. We don't know how many civilians are hurt or killed necessarily. We do know many people have had to flee the country. Most, I think that the majority have been going through to Poland, but really any country bordering Ukraine is getting refugees at this moment. And so we're in this kind of moment where, I don't know, Flo, maybe you could describe what have you been seeing from like different folks on their responses within the US on this attack? Because there's this fear of escalation, right? Russia is doing an all-out war, and this is just on the border of NATO countries. It's really within what was a NATO candidate. And one of the concerns with NATO is, even if it's some weird right-wing country that is a part of it, if they get attacked, then the rest of NATO kind of has an obligation to clap back. So we're in this moment, and it sort of feels like there's kind of a lot of people drumming up the war drums over here in the US.
Yes. So I think that's the thing that's a little bit scary, is that, here, at least, my impression is that there's sort of like three ways people are approaching this, right? And they really fall kind of into two camps, right? There are the people who are like, oh shoot, this means we're going to war, right? There are the, oh yay, this means we're going to war, right? People, and then there are that problem's over there and we really should stay out of it, right? And I that's kind of the responses that I'm hearing, and most people are kind of falling into that camp. I think the challenge, of course, becomes, what does involvement look like that doesn't turn this into a world war, right? Because now we have, China and others lining up in support. And so it just really feels like we're kind of, playing, I want to say a game of Jenga, but it feels even more like, precarious than that, maybe a house of cards, literally, where like, at any point in time, it's all going to implode. But that really seems to be where people's mind frames are going, is that, if Russia does this, what's next, right? Will Russia continue to be able to press forward, and are the other countries in the region also at risk as well? Because I mean, in some ways, Russia has not been like quiet about this movement, but they certainly have escalated it beyond just rhetoric, which it was for a very long time now, into actual action. And so the question becomes, now that other superpowers like China line up behind them, do they feel emboldened to continue to press on? What's been hard for me to understand, and I think we can kind of get into this, is like, beyond the existential threat piece, if sanctions do come down and all of that, how does Russia stand to benefit? I'm always trying to figure out where the chips align in terms of like, because it seems to me like Russia gets a short-term gain maybe, but if the rest of the world really does decide to get involved, ends up getting, slapped back pretty hard and loses a lot in the process with the sanctions and all the things that are coming in. And so I'm still trying to figure out, and I just don't know enough about politics in the region to really understand like what Putin's long-term strategy is for how this actually sets Russia up to win.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic question. And I don't know the answer to that. This is not an international relations podcast.
Yeah.
And, the thing that struck me 2 weeks ago was Putin's being really wildly out of character, being more emotional in his speech, which I found kind of concerning. Like, like maybe there is a strategic end game, but like maybe it's also a little bit personal. Maybe he feels slighted post Olympics. Like, and again, this is all really wild speculation.
That
but
would be
like,
a wild reason.
Yeah, but his country gets stripped of its, using the flag in the Olympics. The huge embarrassment of this, like, really the most impressive athlete at the games. Just her whole storyline being tainted by this doping scandal that has a lot of question marks about when the test happened, when they released it, all this, like, I can see how, I don't know, like there's a part of me that wondered if there was like something there on the global community level. But yeah, I mean, I think really what it does come down to is, I would guess strategically trying to really push back any more encroachment from the Western world, which he does, I think, view as an existential threat. I don't think he's a good person. I think this is really a horrific act. But yeah, I think we can talk with some nuance about the responses here in the Western world on it. Some of really interestingly, most of the war drum beating has come from the libs, the neo-libs, sort of the right-wing Democrats, and they've been joined in hawkishly by sort of the Lincoln Republicans, the ones that like were like, oh, we want Trump out of office, right? Which, like Schuyler has said before, that the difference between those two, it's not even like a sliver of light. Like, these are really the same types of folks. And then you have these weird reactions from the Republicans where they're not really sure how to respond, because they're like, what? We're usually the warmongers, like, what's going on here? And they've been trying to figure out like kind of how to message it in a way that harms the Democrats. Obviously, Trump has been a Putin fan for years, tried to ally himself with him, which now leaves like a lot of the other Republicans wondering like, well, am I allowed to say I hate the guy? Like, what's going on here? And so it appears the party line that they're coalescing around is just attack the Democrats at home on this and be like, wow, look, gas is over $7 a gallon. Like, can you believe this? Like, these crazy Democrats are going to ruin like our lives here in the US.
Can I pause there and ask you guys a question real quick? And this is sort of off topic, but it pertains to the gas prices thing. So like, of course, everybody who lives, especially, I have to imagine in California, but in Sacramento, cannot stop talking about how high the gas prices are and how they went to the gas pump and it hit $100 and the thing turned off. They had to go back and like the whole thing, oh my God, the sky is falling. Gas is $6 a gallon or whatever. Which fine, like, I mean, and that is like, there's a lot of people who are in economic situations to where like, that's a serious consideration. They can't, live too far from work to ride a bike. They need to drive. And that does hit people in their pockets in a major way. And I'm not trying to diminish that, because that's a real problem for a lot of people, a lot of working class people. But why is it that for a certain demographic, like with the right, why is it that they can always identify this major problem when gas prices are up, but whenever literally any other prices go up with anything, with food, with housing, with any of the rest of it, and people are like, hey, like housing is too expensive, I can't afford it. And it's like, well, you should get a better job, is the response. But for some reason, gas is this weird thing that's by itself where like the right will like freak out when it gets too high, rather than just be like, ExxonMobil should make, X amount of profit, even if it makes all the rest of us suffer. That's the economic system that we like, but they won't do that for whatever reason with gas. I don't know. It's just very weird to me.
It is an interesting question about why gas is different. And the other piece of it is that like, we don't actually have, I mean, aside from just like the global non-renewable resource issue of like, we don't have an unlimited supply of what we're using to fuel our cars, right? Our combustion engines, but like, there's not actually a supply issue right now. So we've just raised the prices in anticipation that this could really hamper the world's like supply, but the supply actually isn't down right now. So there's also a weird like game
just speculators
of speculation that's happening right now that's just like squeezing everybody, but
fucking Wall Street like just strangling everybody, right? Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure there probably is a nuanced answer to that. Part of me wonders if it has to do with just their general alliance with corporate owners of big oil, right, in Texas and other places. And then like also there's just this classic volatility to gas that's like whether or not a president has anything to do with it, which they don't generally. Although this situation,
there is a fader on Biden's presidential desk that he at random, like when Democrats get to that desk, they push the fader up. And Republicans get in, they pull the fader back down. And that is how gas prices work in this country.
Okay, I sit corrected.
Now we know.
But yeah, I mean, it's just... there's other topics like that too, that like, well, just generally the economy, that like we put all of that on the shoulders of a president when it's like there can be very many different factors, going into it. Or there's just a bunch of faders that they prefer to pull down.
I actually think that, it makes sense to me that gas is this thing that like we're paying so close attention to, in part because transportation does drive the cost of all of our goods, right? So like the food prices are likely to go up if it costs more to transport food from one place to another. And like, while it doesn't necessarily change your house costs, it changes, like we were saying earlier, like how much it costs for you to get from there to work. And like it impacts your life in this like kind of central way, because everything you're doing for most people involves some element of transportation. So is public transit going to go up, right? Are the fares going to have to go up because fuel costs more money? Are your airfares is going to have to go up? Are your costs of goods and services going to have to go up because this one thing went up? So I do think it makes sense that we pay attention to it in this way, because it does drive the cost of all these other things. But there also is this way that it's so like speculatively driven that the volatility doesn't really like align closely with like what's happening in the way that the prices of other things often do.
I think there's politically expedient messaging you can use though, because it's about your material conditions as a person at quote unquote Main Street that Republicans can use to their advantage.
Yeah.
Except if it comes to healthcare, housing, access to food, drinkable water, literally any other thing.
That stuff's a slow burn, so they can just lie. Like the volatility, I think, of gas allows them to bring the lie up a few notches.
Yeah.
Were we talking about a war or something?
Yeah, yes. we were talking, and we were also talking about like why this has been so challenging in terms of where we fall. I think actually, Republicans struggling a bit with I'm being really gracious tonight, just kind of fumbling their message and being on, a clearly wrong side of this is just an example of we've gotten to the place where people are just like, we're so deeply partisan that it doesn't matter what the issue is. If it feels like one side has staked a claim in it, the other side will just say down for the sake of it, right? Like I mean, it reminds me very much of like the masks debate of like, why did a pandemic become a thing, and why did the mask become this sign of like like, do you not want to live? Do you not want the people who support you to live? Like, I just don't understand it. And this feels the same. It's like, it's not really justifiable in a way that aligns with like some political position, like some deeply held core belief. It just sort of feels like, oh, the Democrats are involved, and if we go to war, they're going to be the ones who are responsible. Yeah, we're going to be against this. We don't know why. It just, that's what we do. We oppose what they say. Anything. Yeah, like, you know, we if they say left, if they go left, we go right. If they go up, we go down. Like, it doesn't matter. That's just what we do.
There's a cynical part of me too that thinks that if the Republicans know that if the Democrats beat the war drums, get in there, and, you know, are hailed as the heroes of this thing, then that's good for them politically too, in the coming election. Because we've seen we saw Republicans do that for Iraq, for Afghanistan, for all this shit. And there's a cynical part of me that thinks that they're like, well, we don't want to go to war yet. We don't want to, you know, create World War III yet. We want it to be our decision. There's also like a thing where, like, even there have been some conservative folks like there, I've seen a number of people make the same statements that former diplomats for the last 4 or 5 White Houses have all said the same thing and used the same reasoning, that NATO was a huge issue to Putin. The creep east was a huge concern for him. He viewed it as an existential threat. And the fact that that's not even on the table for the US is, like, you know, of Ukraine joining or not joining on the table for him. Like, of course it's going to escalate. And I don't think that that should be a controversial thing. And I don't think that when you mention that you are suddenly, you know, a Putin stooge. Like, this is just kind of how the interaction between these two belligerents works right now, right? And that's been concerning to me. So, like, DSA, which, by the way, DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, not a monolith of the greater left at all, right? They are one organization of just under 100,000 people within the United States. But they put out a statement that is fairly anodyne statement, in my opinion, saying, like, hey, we denounce all wars. All a war here in Ukraine is going to do is hurt the working class of both Ukraine and of Russia. And, like, this needs to not happen. The whole world needs to work together to come to some, you know, peaceful resolution to this. And then they also said, oh, we also reaffirm that the US should leave NATO. And that was the part that, like, just like the libs just, like, latched onto and just flipped their shit all throughout the country. Is that warranted?
The lib response to this thing in general has been kind of wild to watch. It's definitely like, and like, you know, like Dave said at the beginning, like, Putin sucks. This invasion is unconscionable, and what is happening over there is terrible. And I want to say that with no ambiguity, but, like, to watch the libs, like, spin the Russophobia thing up, like, super hard as soon as they have, like, an opportunity like this is wild, and it works. Like, people really go for that. And there's all this weird rhetoric. I think the weirdest thing to me is that so many of the Democrats, or the lib Democrats, like, criticisms of Putin are, like, things that you can easily critique the US for, you know what I mean? And it's so weird to me to watch them do it with no self-awareness, like, for them to be like, oh, like, did you see Putin? He's, you know, really, you know, like, to not that you were doing this, Dave, but to be like, oh, he was really emotional. Like, maybe he's sick. Maybe his brain is starting to slip. Like, this is, you know, man, are we gonna let some, like, demented old fuck drive us into a world war? And it's like, have you seen the American president? like if we're going to talk about doddering old men leading these, like, extremely wealthy, extremely powerful countries around, like, what are you talking about? I don't know. Right. The other thing that was hilarious, did you see in the State of the Union, Biden has this quote. I'm going to quote it. Biden says, "I say to the Russian oligarchs who have built billions of dollars off this violent regime, no more. We are joining with our EU allies to find and seize your yachts, your luxury apartments, your private jets. We are coming for your ill-gotten gains." The fact that any liberal Democrat would hear that and be like, "Yeah," is like
get up.
What? Also, like, tell me if you're a lib,
gains.
What is tell me the difference between a Russian oligarch and an American billionaire. If you can lay that out plainly for me, I would appreciate it, because I don't think that anybody can do that.
They're the price. I can't even speak. They're precisely the same thing.
Exactly the same.
Yeah.
Which is like
they speak a different language, and so it's dangerous.
And it doesn't make what the Russians are doing good. It's just like can you don't have like even this small amount of self-awareness to be able to be like it's like the Spider-Man meme, you know, where they're like pointing at each other. It's like, no, like. Also, the thing, Dave, you pointed out that thing where what were the numbers on? They did that poll on like, hey, do you think that Russia is a communist country?
Yes.
Yeah.
What were the numbers on that?
So, which do you think best describes Russia? This was a YouGov poll from March 1st. So that's just under a week ago, or almost exactly a week ago on the day we publish. The four options are, so which do you think best describes Russia? The four options are communist, socialist, capitalist, or something else. The answer,
outrageous. It's outrageous.
55% of the people answering said either communist or socialist. 42% said communist, 13% said socialist, 11% said capitalist, and then 17% said something else. So
okay, so this poll, what Russia, I want to see out of this poll is a follow-up question that just says, and why?
Why though?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, why though?
That's so laying out the fact for the listeners, Russia has not been anywhere near socialist, communist, any of that for over 30 years now. Ever since the fall of the USSR, it has been a oligarchic kleptocracy, very similar to the United States, very similar. And it's been this dynamic where super rich people, billionaires, run the show, puppetry behind, you know, the scenes, and by the elections, the parliament, the presidency, for the very rich people. Like it's exactly the same as what we have here.
The same thing. And there's this whole narrative about how like, oh, but Putin is this ruthless guy and he'll go to any lengths to like get what he wants and he assassinates people. It's like, dude, what do you think the CIA is doing?
Yes. And again,
what do you think is happening here?
Putin is those things, but like, oh my God, do you know anything about our history? Anything about our history?
Right.
When they go on about like, oh, it just cannot stand that, you know, one country would invade the borders of another country without a reason. It's like, are you
hearing yourself or right?
Do you remember Iraq? Do you know what we did to Yemen? Like Libya, like any of these things. And of course, there's the racist double standard to all of it. But I think where a lot of this comes to and where they get away with it is the Russophobia that goes all the way back to the red baiting of the 1950s and 60s, right? Which, by the way, NATO started as basically after World War II ended, folks, after we crushed fascism, and by we, I mean the fucking communists. After that all happened, communists had like a lot of social capital all throughout Europe because they were the only ones out in the streets fighting fascists during World War II. And so the capitalists out west, all the billionaires out west were like, oh no, we can't have that. So they got into NATO, formed NATO, and their capitalist governments worked alongside the losing fascists in all of these countries, hid entire caches of weapons underground, all these different places, just in case socialism or communism took hold in Europe. This is the origin story of fucking NATO. Like, I'm glad we get to get a little yelly at the end of this episode. I wasn't sure if we would, but like, there's just like an astounding amount of hypocrisy. And the red baiting goes back, all the way to the 50s in the US. And then once Russia flipped to a, just like the US again, an oligarchy, there was still anti-Russian sentiment, particularly with the rise of Putin, because he was just another strongman that our strongmen didn't like. And they just carried along the same dumb fucking rhetoric, right? Saying like comrade to like Trump, even like 2-3 years ago. It's the same absolutely ahistorical fucking nonsense that allows the neolibs to sort of just like maintain the narrative and just be like, see, look how, this is the way we should be doing this. It blows my mind.
Yeah.
That felt good. I don't remember the last time I yelled like that on this show.
You should do it more often. It's nice.
Miss it.
It definitely is one of those things, right? And again, I want to say, like, just in case somebody just turned the podcast on and scrubbed up to this point in history, like, this is not an endorsement in any way of like Putin or what he's doing over there. But like, to think about things like what you're talking about, Dave, where you go back, like, to the red baiting of the 50s. And then like, I think about, because, when I was growing up, I was always, you're taught to think of Russia as this like mysterious, like scary place, that's like way over there, and who knows what's going on over there. They don't have rights and freedoms like we do, and like, right. You kind of grow up thinking about that, and like, things like this happen, and I kind of get to the point with it where I'm like having like, I don't know, I guess I could call it like a Christopher Columbus moment, where you're like, wait, was Christopher Columbus actually bad? Like, people have been telling me my whole life that Christopher Columbus was a great explorer. Has that been bullshit the whole time?
The whole time.
And like, you keep having these moments with it, and like I definitely think that that's part of it. Like, you grow up like hearing all these stories about the USSR and everything, and I'm like, can I trust anything from that narrative? Because I'm not trying to say that like the USSR is great, like whatever. I don't have like really a stake in that one way or the other, but I'm like, I don't think that this narrative that I've been hearing my whole life, that I've grown up just sort of assuming is true, is the real thing here. I don't buy that. I've had too many Columbus moments in the last 10 years.
Same, man.
10 or 15 years to like buy into that like at all.
We did what in Guatemala? Like,
right. Yeah, I don't know. I'm really struggling with some of the hot takes, and I think part of it is like this kind of earnestness that I come into most people with, of like, okay, so assuming you're a reasonable person, and someone said to me once, why have I questioned your basic assumption here? Like, you're starting at a place that may not lead you down a path of understanding if you're assuming that like that this is going to make sense because people are being reasonable. And I think that's the part that's hard for me, is that I have a little bit of a sweet summer child thing where I'm like, well, if it's going to make sense, if this is what we're saying, then this is what we should be doing. And like, that doesn't follow. And I think that's very hard for me to accept.
When I first posted that poll of Americans thinking that Russia of 2022 is either communist or socialist by a majority, right. I just quote tweeted it and said, Americans are dumb as rocks. And a friend responded, which I think was with a much more nuanced thought, which is, honestly, I think Americans are just really good listeners, because we have just been fed this just nonstop at the trough I mean, not just for 75 years, but the last 35, when it was like none of that was even remotely true. Even not even like qualifying socialism or communism as good or bad, like that's just that's counterfactual.
Right.
And I thought that was a very human way to look at that. It's like I should not be mad at other Americans. Like it's, you know, it's sort of the conversation, the greater discourse of our elites that has led us down this path that should really have us not feeling great about it. I also get concerned about just how powerful that messaging has been over the years.
Absolutely.
Like, I feel like we're starting to crest it. I feel like it has crested their power with messaging, but I feel like this is one of my not so sweet summer child moments. Like, I feel like we have so far to go. Like, people that I consider very reasonable people are starting with, as you are kind of implying, a different set of givens. And when that's the case, we're going to go down different paths.
Yep. Absolutely.
So do we have any like major, I don't know if there is sort of a final like reflection or a thought or a call to action on this war. I do think it's important to push back on the warmongering messaging. And if people will call you, you know, friends of Putin, it's like, fuck off, you know, so be it. But beyond that, I mean, what are our thoughts here? Like, I know I'm sure there's ways to support the people of Ukraine too, that I do not have the links to that on hand.
Yeah, I mean, Sacramento has a pretty significant Ukrainian population here already. And I think that is likely to mean that we will be receiving refugees as things go on. So I would say maybe a call to action is to be ready for that and kind of look around and figure out how you can be helpful when that happens, because there's going to be people who are going to need our help, and we should be ready to help them.
I like that. Who's been really good at that? NorCal Resist has been really good at taking in refugees.
NorCal Resist has been, honestly, like, shout out to NorCal Resist, who has been doing crazy work with Afghan refugees. Really, really, really good work. And continues to. They're still out there kicking ass, even though they keep running into a crazy amount of barriers with what they're doing. They are not stopping or slowing down. So yeah.
The US government is refusing a lot of people from coming here currently. And these are family members of the folks who've come from Afghanistan to Sacramento. And NorCal Resist has been trying to help them. And it's sort of horrifying. You know, these are people that literally worked alongside, you know, Americans on some things, and they are just leaving them to the wolves. So big thanks to NorCal Resist for their work in that. I think that's a good direction to send folks. I'm sure other nonprofits will come up. Last 2 Sundays, so I live right by the state capitol here in Sacramento, and the last 2 Sundays at nighttime, I will go around the capitol usually, and there have been just some like really nice sort of collections of people, demonstrations. I don't know what you'd call them. Some of them are like little opportunistic, like political moments, but like I think there is something really to be said about community with something like this. And this far around the world, when you go to something like that, like at least half the people there are Ukrainian American, and we're speaking, in Ukrainian, and it was just like, this is so much closer to home than we actually think it is. And so I don't know if they'll be doing one of those in future Sundays, but I'd recommend to folks to stop by if they do.
It is. I mean, it's also, you know, it's important to remember that for a lot of us, this is almost like, this is something that is happening in a faraway place that most of us will never visit. And it probably, I mean, unless things go really, really haywire, it probably won't tangibly affect most of our lives very much. no matter what. But that is not true for a lot of people, not just over there, but there's a lot of people here. I got a kind of a sobering reminder of that. I was talking to an ex-coworker of mine who's Polish, and her parents live like right on the border. And I hadn't even like considered that, you know, and
Yeah.
I was like, oh, so how have things been going? And she was like, bad. You know, and I was like, oh shit, yeah, no, I didn't at all consider that, you know. So, you know, I don't know, for those folks, solidarity. It sucks.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm also thinking about, you know, we haven't really, you know, had a chance to touch on this yet, but, you know, at the same time that all of this is happening, I'm always reminded that, you know, global anti-Blackness is real, and there have, you know, while we're offering solidarity, you know, to the Ukrainians, there's also the internal politics of how they're treating, you know, primarily African, you know, people of African descent who are in Ukraine, often, you know, more recent immigrants, and, you know, some of the same things that we experience here in the United States and around the world. And so, you know, it's a reminder of just how incredibly messed up that is. But it also, it you know, it adds a level of complication to what we're experiencing, because there's this part that's like, really, like, you're in the middle of all of this and you still have time to just be a deplorable human, like like, really, like pick and choose your battles right now. Like, you don't think you can drop the racism for just like a little while millions of people are becoming refugees? Like, how does this work? So, you know, that's the piece that comes up, and I just, you know, offer the solidarity to folks who are there, and you know, an understanding of how complicated that makes even the offering of solidarity feel, when you're like, I'm offering a level of compassion and understanding to people. And this is also, right, I saw an image that was on social media that was like, where things, you know, where we get nonstop coverage of atrocities and what people look like, right, in terms of that, and where we just don't care, or where we pretend that these conflicts have been going on for so long, so that there are no, you know, options to them, and we shouldn't bother to engage. And it's really racist and really messed up.
Yeah, people have been like just openly saying that, like there's like news anchors who have said things to the effect of like, look, this isn't Syria, some like war-torn shithole place that nobody cares about. This is a place where white people live. Like, they look like people. Us. Yeah, exactly. It's
they said they have blonde hair and blue eyes. Are you fucking kidding?
Yeah. Can you imagine like going on camera and saying, like, I mean, like,
and they said it with their chest.
Again, the self-awareness is just like
they did.
Yeah, incredible. And that is a major part of it. And I you know,
and that's more casual racism, which like is wild to say that, but like there is more overt racism happening, like the reports that, and like, I guess I have not like confirmed any of these. I obviously don't live out there, but like there were reports of not letting African students onto trains and prioritizing Ukrainians on the way out to Poland. Yep. There were reports, a lot of reports at the Poland border patrol of Black folks, a lot of students just like being denied entry from them. And like, you know, I can see, I know the president over in Poland is claiming that, like, you know, we will accept literally everyone, please come in. But I don't know, like, and then like, you also don't know with the rank and file folks, and Poland has really a horrific in recent years strain of racism that as a Polish leftist, I'm like third generation American, but like I still try and pay attention to what goes on over there. Like, it's been concerning, and it's very much happening, and it's happening in real time. Not only that, very well-regarded outlets have been saying that white nationalists in Poland, those groups have been attacking some of the African refugees. So yeah, I mean, it's so it's always a part of this, right? The racism, whether it is more casual or more overt. We're even seeing pictures of Ukrainian people fighting against the Russians, but then they have fucking Nazi symbols on their chest, right? And how do you respond to that? How do you respond to that as somebody viewing this, you know?
Yeah, it's just like, come on, y'all, focus.
Yeah.
That's what I want to yell at people. Just like, focus.
Shall we call it? Skylar, I recommend you a book, but I know that your partner already vetoed it. The Parable of the Sower, folks.
Certain literature.
Parable of the Sower.
How to navigate the horrific coming century that we have.
Absolutely.
A new religion.
It's an amazing one.
Well, Dave, speaking of a new religion,
I've been listening to them a lot. Yeah.
If I wanted to worship at the altar of the best takes available on the internet,
worship at the altar. Oh, wow.
Where could I find if I were seeking a sanctuary that was full of offerings and what do they have in churches? It's been a long time for me.
Wafers.
Anyway, Dave, where can I find the greatest takes on the internet? And that is the whole question, Dave.
You know, Skylar, I'm glad you asked, and I think I do know of a place. It's really a place where you can just be dunked nostril up into the waters of truth through baptism.
Wow. Okay.
Isn't that what baptism is?
We're just doing this. Okay.
That always freaked me out about baptism.
We're like I said, we're just doing this. Okay. All right. I'm
all
here.
Right. Anyway, hashtag nostrils up, folks. Don't nostril up into the baptism of truth that is voicesrivercity.com. We have a store so you can clothe yourselves in, the symbols of our religion that are Voices River City mugs, t-shirts,
we sell
stickers.
False idols.
Mm-hmm. I believe there is a VRC crucifix at this point. You can support us on there isn't. Flo, are you getting offended?
No, I am bewildered.
I've been listening to some of our older episodes and I'm like, I'm just getting back into that spirit of things. The store is voicesrivercity.com/shop, I believe. We are on all the socials, Facebook, Voices River City, Twitter and Instagram at Voices River City. Those are very fun and funny. I personally am, we're on Patreon. Please support us, help us do all of the things that we're doing. So that is patreon.com/Voices River City. I am on Twitter at Kempa, YUKNOWKEMPA.
You can find me at Guillotine for You. That is Guillotine, the number 4, YOU.
And you can find me at Flojaune, FLOJAUNE. And you can find Shannon at ShanND Stevens.
And PJ's not on every episode, but
you can find him at AOL Bites.
AOL Bites, a fantastic follow.
AOL Bites is always doing the Lord's work.
Yes.
That is true. Very true.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's call it. Let's have a good week, folks.
In the name of the Father, the Son,
oh my gosh,
and the Holy Spirit,
and the River City.
Amen.